Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. If I run for 10 more minutes, maybe I won't be that late. Sophie Bennett muttered, adjusting her skirt as the wind kept trying to blow it up. She was running down the avenue, not very gracefully, heading to the company where she worked as an administrative assistant. No car, no bike, and the bus. Well, the bus had passed 30 seconds before she turned the corner. To make things worse, today was the big day. The new CEO would be introduced. Rumor had it, he was young, rich, and mysterious. He had taken over after a surprise merger. No one knew what he looked like, just that he came from a wealthy family and studied at Harvard. Just a few steps from the crosswalk, while mentally repeating, "Don't trip, don't trip," she heard a noise from the side and a whoosh of wind. She looked over, and then everything happened at once. A bicycle came out of nowhere. The cyclist, Ethan, looked like he stepped straight out of a magazine, dark blue suit, headphones in his ears. The contrast was almost funny, tall, classy, with the kind of casual look you'd see in a cologne ad. He must have been in a hurry too, because he was flying past. "Watch out!" Sophie tried to shout, but it was too late. The bike got way too close. One of the pedals snagged the edge of her skirt, yanking the fabric hard. She felt the sudden breeze on her legs and the unmistakable sound of ripping. "What are you, crazy, you pervert?" Sophie shouted, using her bag to cover herself as she ran toward him, her face completely red. Ethan hit the brakes, turned around, and saw her skirt caught on the bike chain like a white flag. He stared at the girl in her button-up shirt, bare legs, eyes wide open in shock. "I'm so sorry. I swear it was an accident," he said, dropping the bike and running toward her holding the skirt. "Are you nuts? Some kind of two-wheeled creep? What, no, you're the one who stepped into my way? I was walking on the sidewalk, and I was dodging a killer poodle. You ripped off my skirt, blame the skirt. Why wear something so snag-prone? Snag-prone. Are you just making up words now? It's an offensively aerodynamic skirt." Now they were face to face. She stood there in just a long shirt, trying to keep what little dignity she had left. He stood there holding the skirt like a surrender flag. "Give me that." She yanked the fabric from his hand, furious. "Really, I'm sorry. Can I help somehow?" "You've helped enough. What's next? Going to rip off the rest of my clothes?" "Look, I was just trying to get to work." "So was I. And guess what? Now I'll show up looking like I crawled out of a tornado. Hey, want a ride?" He pointed to the bike. "If you bring that bike near me again, I'll throw coffee on your suit." Ethan raised his hands, laughing despite himself. Okay. It was an unfortunate accident, with a funny twist." She glared at him. He winked. She sighed, turned around, pulled 2 bobby pins from her bag, and did her best to twist and pin the skirt back in place. "Get out of here, apocalypse cyclist." Ethan got on his bike and started pedaling. About 10 meters away, he called back. "Sorry, I took your skirt, but nice legs." He laughed out loud. She raised her finger at him, the index one, because she still had manners. With her skirt badly pinned together, she turned and walked away, holding on to whatever pride she had left. "This has to be a cosmic prank. First the bus skips me, then Tarzan on a bike, and now I'm holding my clothes together with bobby pins. Great, Sophie. Just great." Far ahead, Ethan kept looking back, still laughing. "She's intense, but she's not going to forget me anytime soon." The company auditorium was packed, screens on projectors. Ready little coffees being served on plastic trays, pretending to be fancy. Everyone whispered, wondering who the new CEO was. "They say he's young," one receptionist whispered, "and super rich, like private jet, and an elevator in the bedroom rich," another added. "But no one's seen a photo, not even on LinkedIn. He's like a ghost CEO." Meanwhile, Sophie was walking down the hallway like she just survived a zombie attack. Her skirt was still pinned with 2 bobby pins, and with each step she could feel the fabric threatening to fall. She skipped the coffee table, ignored the stares and whispers, and found a seat in the back row, trying to disappear. Sophie whispered Mia, her coworker, "What happened to your clothes?" "Long story. It involves a bicycle and a mentally unstable guy," she replied, adjusting her skirt for the 10th time. "That sounds awful. Was it a robbery? Worse, it was a fashion accident. I'll tell you later." Mia just blinked, confused, while Sophie turned her focus to the stage in front of them. An HR executive stepped up to the microphone with the energy of an awards show host. "Good morning, everyone. Today is a special day for our company. As you know, our new CEO is here. He's taking over starting today, and I can assure you he's a true change-maker." Sophie rolled her eyes. "Here come the arrogant guys in suits." The presenter went on. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ethan Hayes." Sophie's heart stopped. Literally a second of complete silence. Her feet froze, eyes wide. "No. No. No. Slowly she stood up a bit to get a better look. And there he was, the creepy cyclist, the skirt yanker, the man who ruined her dignity that morning, walking calmly up to the stage, smiling in a perfect suit. Same face, same carefully messy hair. He held the microphone like he was born to do it. Sophie took a step back, stumbled on her heel, and shouted without thinking, "You." Ethan turned and their eyes met. His smile widened a little. She was speechless. Mia grabbed her arm. "What was that? Do you know him? He pulled off my skirt." Total silence. Someone coughed up front. Ethan coughed too, like he was trying to play it off. Well, I guess that was quite the unique introduction," he said, looking at Sophie for a moment before turning back to the audience. "As some of you might know, or may have just found out, it's been an interesting morning. But I want to say I'm excited about this new challenge, and especially about the chance to work with such an expressive team." The room let out a polite laugh. Sophie slowly sat down, wishing she could melt into the carpet. For the next few minutes, she couldn't even hear what he was saying. All she saw was the scene from earlier playing in her head, the skirt flying the bike, screeching him, holding the fabric and saying, "Your legs are beautiful." And now he was her boss. Of course, obviously the universe hated her. When the speech ended, Ethan came down from the stage, calmly greeted the directors, and walked down the center aisle like a celebrity on the red carpet. Sophie tried to hide behind an intern's head, but it was too late. He passed by, tilted his face slightly, and whispered, "Careful not to lose your skirt." She clenched her teeth. "You're going to pay for this cyclist turned CEO." "I'm looking forward to it," he said with a half smile as he walked on. Mia looked at her wide-eyed. "What was that, Sophie?" "What do you mean?" "He pulled off your skirt." "Literally pulled it off. It was like a wild fashion show gone wrong. I want to disappear. And he's really handsome." "Shut up. No, really. I think I'm falling for him. I think he's a magazine cover psychopath. That's kind of hot too." "Mia." Okay, but are you really going to keep working here with him staring at you like that?" Sophie sighed. Her skirt was starting to come apart again. She got up and quietly left the auditorium, holding the fabric with both hands. But before she could leave, she heard one last line. "By the way," said the HR executive at the mic, "the new CEO will have a personal assistant. We'll announce who it is later today." Sophie froze at the door. No, not me. "I'm not." Then she felt a chill, a very bad feeling. "You wouldn't, would you?" Outside, Ethan was talking to someone from HR, typing on his phone. On the screen, he wrote, "About my assistant I've already chosen." Sophie was pacing in the HR hallway, her skirt still half-pinned and her head spinning. What started as a regular morning had turned into a nightmare in several chapters. First the bicycle accident, then the public humiliation in the auditorium. Now the cherry on top. Someone from HR had just invited her to a private meeting with the new CEO. She walked into the room with frayed nerves, but kept her posture. She held her head high, chest out, and knocked on the door. "Come in," said the voice inside. She opened the door. There he was, Ethan, sitting in a swivel chair holding a coffee cup as if nothing had happened. "Seriously, you call me in here and pretend everything's normal. Hello, Sophie. Have a seat," he said, pointing to the chair in front of his desk, wearing that same smug smile. "I'd rather stand. I've been sitting since you ripped my skirt off. I need time to recover emotionally." Ethan raised his eyebrows, resting his elbow on the table. "Nice to see we're starting off with maturity." "Maturity. You ran me over with a corporate bike. And now you want to talk about maturity. Technically, you stepped into my path. Technically, you have issues. And technically, you just got promoted." Sophie blinked twice. "You heard me. I've decided you're going to be my new personal assistant starting today." The silence in the room lasted exactly 3 seconds before it broke. "Are you kidding me? I don't joke about promotions. That could lead to lawsuits. After what you did to me this morning, the least you could do is let me work 5 miles away from you. But you're organized, direct, you speak your mind, have good reflexes," he pointed at the coffee she was still holding, "and clearly handle tough situations well. You're perfect for the job. This is punishment, not a promotion." "Are you trying to torture me just a little?" he said with a smile. "Listen here, Ethan Hayes, or whatever your superhero in a suit name is. I'm not taking this job. Forget it." He crossed his arms and leaned forward. "Of course you can refuse, but then you stay at the shared desk next to that printer that yells paper jam all day. And no raise." Sophie hesitated. She thought about her bills, her rent, the printer, Supervisor Karen's constant complaints. This is emotional and professional blackmail. Welcome to corporate life. She crossed her arms. "Fine, I'll take it. But just so you know, I'm going to make your life very difficult." "Great. I love a challenge, and you're going to regret it." I already regret riding my bike to work this morning. But here we are. Sophie took a deep breath. She was now officially tied into an emotional contract with a cycling CEO who for some reason thought all of this was funny. And what about the dress code, she asked. Because the skirt you tore is beyond repair. I already ordered new clothes for you. Stronger fabrics, gear resistant. She gave him a deadly stare. He faked surprise. Just kidding. But seriously, you'll get whatever you need. Good, because if another piece of my clothing gets ruined because of you, I'm suing for emotional material and textile damages. Just give me one chance to make it up to you. Let's work together for a week. If at the end you still want out, I'll let you go. No strings attached. Sophie looked at him evaluating. She loved a challenge, but this one felt personal. 1 week, and if you pull on any part of my clothing again, I'll tie your tie to the bike wheel. Deal. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, she heard Sophie. What now? Want my shoes too? Just wanted to say it's nice to see you again, in a less traumatic way. She stopped, slowly turned back with a smile. It's still traumatic. The setting just changed, and she left, slamming the door with slight satisfaction. In the next room, Mia was waiting, jaw dropped. Sophie, did you talk to him? I did, and I'm his new personal assistant. You what? Yep. Apparently I got promoted for passive aggression and clothing endurance. That's wonderful. It's a trap with the beginning of a romance. Don't start, Mia. Just don't. Sophie went back to her temporary desk and began packing her things. She knew the days ahead would be intense, full of teasing challenges and probably more embarrassing moments. But one thing was certain, she wasn't going down without a fight. And Ethan better be ready, because if he thought he was good at games, he hadn't seen Sophie in competitive mode. First day as the CEO's assistant, Sophie showed up right at 8:00 a.m., wearing a new skirt, no safety pins. This time a crisp blouse and a folder full of courage and emotional resilience. She had made herself some serious promises. Don't lose her temper, don't break anything, and most importantly, don't be affected by the cyclist boss's smile. Good morning, she said, walking into Ethan's office. He was standing, spinning a globe on his desk with his finger. You know the best thing about a globe, he asked, not looking at her. It doesn't try to rip people's skirts off. Ethan laughed. Sophie placed the folder on the desk and waited for the day's instructions. All right, Sophie. Today we'll review contracts with our international partners, align the performance reports, and dodge runaway bicycles. Still on that, I will never get over it. They spent the morning going over documents. Sophie was typing so forcefully, it sounded like the keyboard was crying for help. Ethan, on the other hand, watched her with that relaxed look like she was putting on a play, and he had front row seats. In the middle of reading a report, he said, Do you always fix your hair like that when you're annoyed? Only when I have to deal with teasing billionaires. Good. I'll use that as an emotional thermometer. And do you always cross your arms and look at me like you know things I don't? Just the secrets of your patience, which I have to admit is impressive. She raised an eyebrow at him. Do you really need to comment on everything? Only when the company is interesting. Sophie tried to ignore him. Tried, but his comments had an annoyingly charming quality. Around noon, they went down together to the company cafeteria. The walk to the elevator was quiet, but as soon as the doors closed, Ethan let out a loud sigh. This elevator takes longer than my college degree. Oh, so you didn't inherit the company? No, I studied, worked, drank awful coffee, and lived like an intern for 3 years. Hard to picture you as an intern. I was great. One time I typed a whole report wearing oven mitts because the AC was broken. Sophie let out a small laugh. Seriously, sadly, yes. The elevator jerked for a second, making a strange noise. They looked at each other, tense. Was that a sign from above? Sophie asked. Maybe something like, You're flirting at work. Get back to your spreadsheets. Flirting? Who's flirting? You are. Me. You're the one saying lines that sound like a French perfume ad. That was flirting too. Stop it. The doors opened. They walked out with serious faces that fooled no one. At lunch, they sat at a table in the corner. Sophie wanted to avoid the curious glances from coworkers. Mia walked by every 5 minutes just to say hi with a suspicious smile. Mia thinks we're in some office drama, Sophie whispered, eyeing her friend. Aren't we? If we are, it's a badly written episode. Ethan bit into a sandwich. I like badly written episodes. They always have surprises. Later, back in the office, they were discussing a contract clause. This is badly worded, Sophie said, pointing with her pen. Payment with retroactive date until the last 10th of the month. It's standard legal language. It sounds robotic. Can I rewrite it? Go ahead. But if I get a letter from legal using slang like super cool, I'll blame you. Sophie wrote payment will be made by the last day of the month based on the agreed amounts. Clear. Elegant. No slang. Ethan read it and nodded. Impressive. I know. I can also make coffee with one hand and print labels with the other. I don't doubt it. And you, me, what besides riding bikes and removing women's clothes in public? Do you have any useful skills? Ethan laughed, the kind of relaxed laugh that made Sophie secretly more irritated. I cook. Not well, but I do. And I can tie a necktie with my eyes closed. Congrats. That'll save you in a necktie uprising. And you, I can guess someone's coffee order just by looking at their face. Try me. She looked at him for 3 seconds. Oat milk latte with a pinch of cinnamon. Because you pretend to be more complicated than you are. Ethan blinked slowly. Was I right? Unnervingly. Yes, I'm good at this game. You're good at more things than you let on. She didn't respond. She looked at the clock. I have to drop off some reports at HR. Want me to go with you? No, it'll look like we're flirting again. And the elevator might want revenge. She walked off firmly. Ethan watched her disappear down the hallway. And for the first time that day he had nothing to say. He just stood there staring at the door with a slight smile. Later in the afternoon, Sophie went back to her old desk to grab a mug she'd forgotten. Mia was already there, obviously waiting. So what? How many kisses so far, Mia? Just asking. You've laughed, argued, flirted. The next step is either a kiss or a dramatic hallway argument. Nothing like that is going to happen. You like him. I hate him. You like him in a way you haven't figured out yet. Sophie huffed and walked away, pretending the conversation didn't get to her. But deep down, a little voice said, what if Mia's right? On Friday morning, Sophie had barely arrived at the office when she saw a golden envelope on her desk with her name handwritten in elegant cursive. Mia, of course, was already beside her, practically buzzing with excitement. Someone's feeling very important. What's that? If it's a fashion, court summons probably deserved, Sophie muttered carefully. Taking the envelope, she opened it. Inside was a fancy invitation to the company's annual event, a gala dinner with all the executives, investors, and senior staff. Oh no, she said, reading the bold print, mandatory presence of the CEO's personal assistant. That means you, Mia smiled. And in that new dress you're ready to shine, huh? Sophie sighed. Shine isn't the word I'd use. Quietly survive sounds better. Later around lunchtime, she got an internal call from the executive floor. Mr. Hayes's office. It's him. Can you come up? Sophie rolled her eyes, grabbed her notepad, and walked up with steady steps. When she entered, she saw Ethan with his back turned fiddling with a small white box on his desk. You called, yes, he said, turning around with a package in his hands. This is for you. If it's another skirt, I'd rather pick my own. Thanks. It's not. It's a gift. She raised an eyebrow. Is it poison? No, it's a dress. Sophie frowned. You got me a dress for the event. Consider it a long overdue apology and a thank you for surviving 2 weeks as my assistant without killing me. She hesitated. The package was elegant, delicate, very nicely wrapped, and smelled ridiculously good. Look, Ethan, you don't need to buy me clothes. I already have a dress. You do, yes. Navy blue thin fabric, no sparkle, and a zipper that always gets stuck. Sophie's eyes widened. How do you know I'm observant? I'm also good with zippers. But this one, he held up the box, this is different. I think it'll suit you. She crossed her arms defiantly. If it's red, I'm sending it back. What if it's black with subtle details and a cut that flatters without overdoing it? I'll think about wearing it. That night, Sophie walked into the main hall holding a black clutch borrowed from Mia, her heart pounding. The dress really was black with a gentle shimmer on the shoulders and an elegant slit that showed her legs as she walked. She felt different, but what made her most nervous was knowing that at any moment Ethan would appear and surely say something clever to throw her off like always. She spotted colleagues, directors, a few investors she only knew by email, and then finally, she saw him. Ethan was talking with a group of businessmen laughing at something that didn't seem funny like all CEOs at formal events. But when he saw her, he froze for a second. Just 1 second. And that was enough for Mia standing beside her to whisper, he's looking stout, and he stopped smiling. Must have remembered the bicycle trauma. He's coming. Oh my gosh, he's coming. I'm shaking, and it's not even about me. Ethan crossed the room and stopped in front of Sophie. He looked her up and down with a light, almost respectful smile. The dress suits you. Trying to say it looks great on me. No, I'm saying the dress is lucky to be on you. Sophie bit her lip, trying not to smile. Are you going to use that charm all night? Just until you admit you liked the gift. Maybe I like it a little. How much is a little? About 10%. That's progress. We'll be at 50 soon. If we get to 50, you're leaving here on a bicycle. Will you ride with me? Only if you don't try to take anything off along the way." They laughed together, and for the first time since the start of their emotional Cold War, things between them felt light, almost easy. During dinner, they sat at the same table among directors and other guests. Sophie found herself relaxing, telling funny stories about work, and Ethan laughed with genuine interest, like everything about her was a discovery. But not everything would be perfect. While they were getting dessert, a tall blonde woman in a gold dress with knife-sharp heels approached the table. "Ethan, what a surprise seeing you here." Sophie felt a chill down her spine. Ethan turned politely, though his smile faded. "Lauren, you made it." "Of course, I'm a shareholder, remember." She gave Sophie a look like she was examining a rare bug. "And this is Sophie, my assistant." Interesting." Lauren extended her hand. "You two seem close." "Only in chairs," Sophie replied, shaking her hand with a forced smile. Lauren let out a light laugh, the kind that says "I'm going to destroy you," and still sound polite. "I'll see you around," she said, walking away with a sway that had probably been practiced in the mirror. Sophie looked at Ethan. "Who's the snake ex-girlfriend? Why does she say your name like it's a fancy perfume brand?" "Because she still thinks we're getting back together, which isn't happening." "Good to know. Were you jealous?" "I was afraid she might trip me with her stiletto heels. She wouldn't stand a chance. You could take her down with 2 hairpins." Sophie laughed, and for a moment everything felt just a little too perfect. Hours later, when the guests started to leave, Ethan walked her to the door. "Thanks for coming, and for wearing the dress. And thank you for not saying anything about my attempt to wear heels without looking like a limping duck. You walked gracefully. I hardly noticed you tripped 3 times. That was part of the choreography." They laughed again, and then came a silence, this time heavier. Ethan looked into her eyes. "I really enjoyed tonight." "Me too. More than I expected. Would you like to go out sometime outside of work? No reports, no emails, no bikes." But before she could answer, a notification sound interrupted them. She picked up her phone. A message from Mia. "Sophie, you need to see this now. Urgent." Seconds later, another notification. "A video." Sophie clicked. The shaky footage showed Ethan talking to Lauren in the garden, too close, smiling. She touched his arm. What Ethan noticed the change in her face. "Sophie, you said there was nothing going on with her." "There isn't? Then why were you two touching in the garden like a scene from a soap opera?" "It's not what it looks like." She put the phone away, her smile gone. "Good night, Ethan." "Sophie, thanks for the dress." And she walked away, leaving him standing alone at the entrance. Ethan sighed. He knew the night wasn't really over, but what bothered him the most was that for the first time, he felt like he had no control over how the story would end. Sophie spent the weekend watching that video over and over 1, 2, 6 times, and every time the same feeling hit her like a punch in the stomach. He lied. Lauren was there, touching Ethan's arm like they had just gotten back together, and he didn't pull away. He smiled. He chatted. He looked comfortable close. Mia, who had sent the video, tried to lighten the mood with her usual humor. Maybe she's like an allergy from the past, pops up out of nowhere, itches a little, then goes away. She looked pretty comfortable with the itch. Sophie replied, lying on the couch in her avocado pajamas. "You're clearly upset, which means you care." Sophie didn't answer. Upset was putting it mildly. The problem wasn't just the ex or the arm touching. It was the fact that Ethan had looked her in the eyes and said there was nothing going on with Lauren. And now she couldn't decide if she was more upset with him or with herself for starting to believe the whole thing. Monday, 9:00 A. Me des 06. Sophie knocked on the office door firmly. When Ethan said, "Come in," she entered like a storm. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes," she said, using the most professional tone she could manage. He looked up from his laptop and smiled, but it quickly faded. "Sophie, is everything okay?" "Everything's great. Ready for another week of hard work and 0 emotional involvement." He frowned. That was specific. Just being clear. After all, we're professionals, right? "Right," he answered cautiously. "Is something wrong?" "Not unless you've got another ex hiding in the garden." He blinked. "Oh yeah. Oh." Ethan leaned forward in his chair. "You saw the video more times than I'd like to admit. I can explain." "Of course you can. But that doesn't change the fact that you told me one thing and then acted like you were still into her at the same event. I'm not into her. Not at all. Didn't look that way. She showed up unexpectedly, started chatting. I was just being polite. Polite. She was all over you like a perfume commercial. You know that's not true. I don't know anything anymore." "Know why?" "Because I started to trust you. And that was my mistake." Silence filled the room. "Sofia, no. Let's get to work." I don't get paid to feel things. I get paid to manage your schedule, remind you of meetings, and resist the urge to hit you with a pencil holder." Ethan leaned back in his chair, saying nothing. For the first time, he looked lost. The following days were a parade of passive-aggressive silence. Sophie carried out all her tasks with surgical precision. She took notes, scheduled appointments, typed delivered reports, but nothing beyond what was necessary. No jokes, no glances, no light sarcasm. Ethan, on the other hand, tried to ease the tension with his usual lines. Coffee with oat milk and a pinch of awkward silence. She handed him the mug without saying a word. On Wednesday, during a meeting with investors, Sophie made sure to sit across the room far from him. When he called her to present one of the charts, she replied sharply, "Sure, after all, you always call me when you need someone to save your presentation." The investors laughed. Ethan didn't. After the meeting, he stopped her in the hallway. "We need to talk. I don't see a reason. You're hurt, and I want to fix that. You want to control it. That's not the same thing." "Sophie, look, Ethan. I joined this company with zero expectations. Zero. Then you showed up, pulled my world apart, messed with my routine, my head, and now you act like none of it matters. But it does. Too late." She turned around and walked away, leaving him alone in the hallway, shoulders down. On Friday, Lauren showed up again. This time she walked straight in like she had full access, wearing an expensive outfit, crystal heels, and a confident smile. Sophie saw her heading toward reception and quickly slipped into the break room. Mia came in 2 minutes later, out of breath. "The Viper's back. She's on Ethan's floor. Does he know she's here? I think so." She walked in like she owns the place. Sophie bit her lip. She thought about going up, thought about ignoring it, thought about quitting and running off to Hawaii. But she stayed. An hour later, Ethan came downstairs. He looked for Sophie and found her by the printer waiting for a report. "We need to talk now." She didn't even look at him. "We already did. Remember, you explained I lost it." "That's it." Lauren came to say goodbye. "Wow. To you or to my patients. She's leaving the country. She's taking care of her family's business overseas. This has nothing to do with you." "Then why are you telling me?" "Because I wanted you to know, to see that there's no us anymore." "And you want applause?" "No. I want a chance to fix what I broke." "You didn't just break that, Ethan. You broke the way I used to see you." "Then look at me again." She looked at him for a moment, but before she could say anything, her phone rang. It was HR. "I have to take this." She turned and left him standing there once again. That night, Sophie sat on her couch with a tub of ice cream and her phone in hand. She thought about everything: the bicycle, the skirt, the golden invitation, the black dress, the way Ethan looked at her when she truly laughed. And for the first time in days, she cried, not a dramatic soap opera cry, but a quiet, held-back cry, like someone who realizes they're in too deep to go back but still afraid to move forward. Monday, 8:45 a.m. Sophie arrived early. The skirt was new, the blouse too, hair tied up in a quick bun, and her heart a mess disguised as responsibility. Ethan wasn't in yet. She used the quiet to organize her desk, review the schedule, and make his coffee. When he walked in, they looked at each other for a second. One of those seconds that feels like forever. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied, softer than she meant to. He walked to his desk, took off his blazer, sat down and stayed silent. A few minutes later, without looking up, he said, "If you want to leave, I understand." Sophie frowned. "What do you mean? If you don't want to keep being my assistant, if you want to go back to your old department or leave the company, I understand. I don't want to be another weight in your life." She took a deep breath, thought for a moment, then said firmly, "I'm not leaving. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I haven't decided if you're worth it." Ethan swallowed hard. "That's fair. And also because despite everything, I like the challenge." He looked up. "Working with me, putting up with you. That's almost a compliment. It's the best you'll get today." They both smiled, small, hesitant, but real. And just like that, after a week of tension, silence, and an ex-girlfriend haunting the halls, the two of them took one uncertain step toward starting over. No promises, no guarantees, just the idea that maybe, just maybe, there was still something there, something worth fighting for. The office felt quieter that week. The voices in the halls sounded muffled, like someone had turned down the volume on the routine. Even the sound of Sophie's keyboard felt different. Less angry, more tired. There was an invisible wall between her and Ethan. It wasn't made of harsh words or open wounds. It was made of hesitation, of missing smiles, of avoided glances. Sophie kept working. She answered what needed to be answered, met her deadlines, organized schedules, took calls. But what used to be full of sarcasm and light teasing had turned into dry phrases like, "meeting at 2 p.m. The report was submitted. The call with the client is scheduled. On the other side, Ethan seemed to adjust to the silence with quiet discomfort. He knew Sophie was there, out of duty, not choice. He knew he had lost something. Something subtle. Something valuable. On Tuesday, while coming back from an off-site meeting, Ethan passed by a park near the office. He stopped his bike, which had become just a quiet way to get around, and sat on a bench in the shade. He stayed there for almost 20 minutes. No phone, no thoughts about weekly charts, just trying to figure out exactly when everything went off track, when a simple, awkward meeting on the street had turned into emotional confusion. He remembered their first elevator talk, the silly arguments, the way she refused to be charmed, and strangely, that's what had charmed him most. Now there were no jokes, no yelling about ripped skirts, no office debates about who was more stubborn. Now there was just distance. Mia noticed the change on the second day. "You're acting like you're going through a divorce without ever being married," she said, tossing a candy wrapper into the trash with perfect aim. Sophie answered with a sigh. "It's not a divorce. It's more like an emotional break. Does he know you're on this break? He's probably on the same one. Do you still like him?" "I like who he was before he became a walking dilemma. Sophie, if he had just been honest from the start, maybe things would be different. But now every time I look at him, I remember that night, that video, that feeling of being misled. But he explained it. I know. And you believe him." Sophie stayed quiet for a moment before answering. "I do, but I can't forget." Ethan, on his side, tried to fill the gap with work. He started leaving the office earlier, eating lunch alone, delegating tasks to assistants from other departments, even though he knew Sophie would do them better. And she noticed files being passed to others. Emails he used to ask her to write now being handled by interns. She also noticed that he avoided looking at her in the hallway. It was as if they were standing on opposite sides of the same bridge, both waiting for the other to take the first step. On Thursday afternoon, Sophie was called by HR. They needed her to help organize the annual leadership meeting, which would bring together representatives from different company branches. It was a big event, and she'd have to work with another executive coordinator. She accepted right away. Anything that kept her busy and away from the daily tension with Ethan was welcome. During the planning meetings, she met Liam Carter, a manager from one of the East Coast branches. Tall, cheerful, a bit clumsy, but with a light energy that contrasted with the office's gray atmosphere. "So you're the famous Sophie Bennett," he said, shaking her hand with a genuine smile. "Famous? I've heard stories like, she runs 3 meetings at once and still keeps the corporate world from falling apart." Sophie smiled. "Oh, that, yes, I can confirm. That's my superpower." With Liam, the heaviness in her chest felt lighter. The conversations were easy. No hidden messages, no history. And little by little she found herself laughing again, not in the same way she laughed with Ethan, but in a new way, lighter, safer. On Friday, after another planning meeting, Liam invited her for coffee. "Just to thank you for saving my reputation in front of the marketing coordinators," he said, putting his hands in his pockets with a childlike smile. Sophie accepted. The coffee was pleasant. She shared funny stories from her early days at the company, and he talked about his work trips gone wrong, including one where he forgot his suitcase at the hotel and only realized it at the airport. They laughed a lot, and at one point Liam looked at her with a little more attention. "You have a beautiful laugh, you know." That Sophie looked away. "You're also good at making compliments sound like jokes. And you're very good at changing the subject." She smiled, and for a brief moment, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to open up to something new. That same day, Ethan walked into the meeting room and through the inner window saw Sophie sitting in the company's cafe. She was with Liam, laughing, head-tilted, eyes glowing, and Ethan felt something he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't jealousy. It was an odd discomfort, a restlessness like reloading a movie he had started to enjoy, but now someone else had taken his seat. He closed the blinds, went back to his office, and for the first time in weeks, he sat down, unable to focus on work. "Do you think he saw us?" Sophie asked Mia the next day. "Oh, for sure. You think he doesn't watch you. He pretends not to, but he tracks your every move like a motion detector. He doesn't have that right anymore. And Liam, he's nice. Nice like could be my cousin. Nice or nice like maybe I should give him a shot. Nice. I'm not sure yet." Mia touched her arm. "Just don't shut the door. Just because one window didn't work out okay," Sophie laughed. "Putik. I learned it from fortune cookies." The following week, the distance between Sophie and Ethan felt more formal than ever. Their interactions were minimal, professional, calculated. During a strategic planning meeting, he asked her a question, and she answered accurately but without looking at him. Liam, also in the room, took note of everything. He didn't say anything, But later in the hallway, he casually said, "You seem a little tense around your boss." "Oh, that corporate stuff." "Got it. If you ever want to talk, I'm good at listening without interrupting. It's my hidden talent." Sophie smiled, and this time she accepted his dinner invitation. That evening they went to a restaurant with live music. They talked, laughed, and Liam drove her home. At the door, he leaned in slightly. Sophie hesitated, but then touched her cheek to his for a kiss. "Thanks for tonight," she said. Anytime he replied, smiling before walking away. She walked in, closed the door, and saw her reflection in the living room mirror. For a moment, she tried to imagine what it would have been like if Ethan had been the one there. But the image didn't fit, like trying to place a piece from the wrong puzzle. She sighed, picked up her phone, and saw an unread message from Ethan. "Great job, coordinating the event. I saw the photos. You looked great." Sophie stared at the screen for a few seconds before replying, "Thanks. I hope the project met your expectations." Cold professional. Ethan read it and didn't reply. The event the next week was a success. Everything went as planned. At the end, Sophie and Liam were congratulated by upper management. They got bonuses and public praise. Ethan watched from a distance. He clapped, he smiled, but didn't come closer. Sophie noticed and didn't go to him either. They were once again on opposite sides of the bridge, this time farther apart than ever. And yet something between them hadn't fully broken. It was like an invisible thread, stretched tense, almost snapped, but still there, present waiting. The last thing Sophie expected to find on her desk that morning was a handwritten envelope. The handwriting was familiar, straight, neat, no frills, like someone who prefers saying things with as few words as possible. She hesitated before opening it. The office was still empty. Ethan hadn't arrived yet. Mia walked by behind her, holding a cup of chamomile tea and giving her a curious look. Secret message, invitation to Hogwarts. No looks more like a letter. A letter in 2025. That's someone trying to apologize with emotional impact. Sophie didn't answer. She opened it. "Sophie, I thought about sending this by email, more practical, less risky. But I realized part of the problem between us started when I kept choosing the easy way. So for the first time in a long while, I'm doing it the hard way. You may not know this, but I noticed you from day one, even before the skirt and the bike. Yes, I had already seen you at reception a few days earlier. That day was just chaotic. But after the mess, the arguments, the sharp conversations, I started liking how you challenged me. I'm not writing this to excuse my mistakes. They exist and I own them. Lauren was part of my past for a long time. So when she showed up, I froze, not because I felt anything for her, but because I was afraid of falling into the same old patterns I've always hated. You brought me something new, something I couldn't control, and that scared me. If I have even the smallest chance of helping you see who I really am, not just who I was when I got it wrong, I'm going to take it, even if now you're smiling because of someone else. With everything, I still don't know how to say face to face, Ethan." Sophie stood still. The paper trembled in her hands. The handwriting danced before her eyes, blurring into small wet spots that she quickly wiped away with her sleeve. Mia stepped closer. "So he wrote a letter. Oh great, now it really feels like a soap opera. What does it say?" "That he regrets it, that he saw me before the bike, and that he's trying to fix everything the hard way." Mia looked at her for a moment, then said, "This got to you, didn't it?" Sophie just nodded. That day, Ethan avoided crossing paths with her. He knew he had left something too personal on the table, but he didn't regret it. Maybe it was the only way he could be heard, with no interruptions, no sarcasm, no masks. For the first time, he didn't try to control her. He just let go. Later that afternoon, Sophie appeared at his office door. She knocked softly. "Can I come in?" He stood up right away. Of course. She walked in without the stern look she had before. She wasn't smiling, but she also didn't have that cold air she'd carried in recent weeks. "I read your letter." He waited tense. I wasn't expecting that, neither was I, but I had to say it. She stepped up to the desk, stopped in front of him. When Lauren showed up, it wasn't just her that shook me. It was everything at once, the idea that maybe I was being too naive, throwing myself into something I didn't really understand. "You were never naive." I was, because I let myself imagine things. Imagine what. She took a deep breath, rested her fingers on the desk. That between the torn skirt and the mixed-up coffees, a story was happening, one just for us. And it was. I wanted to believe that, but when everything got messy, I realized I was hoping for a kind of love that might only exist in books. Ethan walked around the desk, stopping in front of her. "There's no such thing as perfect love, but there are people willing to try." "I'm trying, Sophie." "I know. And Liam?" She looked at him, surprised by the direct question. "Liam is easy to be around. He's kind. He makes me laugh. He doesn't make me overthink everything. But he's not you. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, taking in those words like fresh air after being underwater. I don't want to mess things up with you anymore. I don't want to feel like I'm losing myself. Then let's take it slow. Slow might work. They both smiled. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't a declaration. It was something in between. An emotional truce, a chance. In the following days, Ethan and Sophie began talking again, more lightly. The jokes came back, but now more carefully. Their eyes met, but without urgency. They seemed like two strangers learning a new language. Each other's language. Liam noticed the change and quietly stepped back. He remained Sophie's friend, but made it clear he wouldn't compete for something that was never his. He's who you want, he told her at a cafe a week later, and that's okay. Life's like that. Sometimes we're just bridges. Sometimes we're the destination. You're more than a bridge, Liam. Your kindness. Kindness also knows when to leave the stage. A new project came up at the company. An international expansion. Ethan would need to travel, and he'd take a small team with him for key meetings. Sophie was the first one chosen to go, but she hesitated. It's going to be a long trip, Ethan said. Hours on the same plane, same hotel, same time zone. It'll be a test for me, for you, for us. She thought for a moment, what if everything falls apart? Then we rebuild, or learn to live with the ruins. Sophie took a deep breath. Okay, I'll go. The trip was a turning point. During meetings, Ethan was focused, sharp, confident, but outside of work, he was different. He showed her the city, shared stories from his intern days, opened up about personal moments with ease. One night on the hotel rooftop, they looked out over the city lights below. Have you ever thought about stopping, she asked. Stopping what? Trying to please everyone, always being right, always in control. I have, but the business world isn't kind to people who seem weak. What if I told you your vulnerability is the most interesting thing about you? He looked at her for a few seconds. Then maybe I should start showing that side more. Maybe you should. A comfortable silence settled between them until he said, that day with the bike, I thought I'd never see you again. And I thought you deserved a fine. Maybe I still do. She laughed. So did he. And then slowly he reached out and held her hand. They didn't say anything because that night silence said it all. The return from the trip was silent, but not uncomfortable silence. It was that rare, comfortable kind of silence. Sophie stared out the airplane window while Ethan, sitting next to her, was reviewing a proposal on his laptop, but occasionally glanced at her as if he wanted to make sure she was still there. There was something in the air, something unsaid, a good kind of tension, not uncomfortable, but also not going away. When the plane landed and they took a taxi together, Ethan was the first to speak. I was thinking tomorrow is Saturday. Great observation, Sophie said, giving him a half smile. And I thought maybe we could do something outside the office. No spreadsheets, no emails, no quarterly profit reports. Like a date. Like a date, but a special one. Sophie raised an eyebrow. You're not asking me out, are you? No, he paused. I'm asking you for a chance. A chance. A chance to see what we are outside these walls. No pressure, no labels, just the two of us. She looked away to the window. Her heart sped up a little. Nothing she let show. All right, she said finally. But if there's a bike involved, I'm out. He promise. Nothing with wheels. The next morning, Sophie woke up with an unusual sense of anxiety. She spent 20 minutes picking out an outfit that was casual, but not sloppy, pretty, but not overdone, as if that were something you could actually measure. When she stepped out of the building, Ethan was standing in front of a car and beside him a light blue scooter. You said nothing with wheels, she exclaimed, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. I said nothing with a bike. This is a scooter. It's a different category. You're a technical liar, but a charming one. She crossed her arms. No way I'm getting on that. Then let's walk. The scooter was just for retro charm. He shrugged. I was sure you'd refuse. Oh, great. You know me too well now. Not enough yet. That's why the invite. They walked to a nearby park where a weekend food fair was taking place. Colorful stalls, tempting aromas, and a lively crowd. This is unexpected, Sophie said, accepting a goat cheese sample from a smiling vendor. I thought it would be fun. Plus, you like things off the beaten path. Have you been studying my behavior? I consider it part of the job. CEO studying assistant profile, right. Very professional. They strolled between the stalls, stopping to try homemade pies, truffle garlic bread, pistachio brigadeiros, which Sophie judged with a skeptical look before admitting they were good. In the middle of the park, there was a Ferris wheel surrounded by kids and teenagers. Oh no, don't even think about it. Sophie said, seeing Ethan turn his face toward the attraction. I didn't say anything. You looked. I'm innocent. You're never innocent. But minutes later they were sitting together in cabin number 12, slowly rising as the city stretched out in the background. Do you remember our first day? He asked. The day you ripped my skirt, the same one, he laughed. I thought in that moment, you'd hate me for the rest of your life. I thought that too. And now she looked at him. For a moment, there was no cabin, no park, no fair, just them suspended in time. Now I don't know what we are, but I don't hate you anymore. If that helps, that's already a big win. He took her hand, not like he wanted to claim it, but like he was asking for permission. And she didn't pull away. The Ferris wheel ride ended, but the ease between them stayed. After the park, they continued walking through an old neighborhood in the city. They entered a small bookstore with the smell of aging pages. Sophie pulled books off the shelves at random, laughing at the titles while Ethan followed, watching her more than the covers. If you were a book, what genre would you be? He asked, leaning against a shelf. Romantic comedy with existential drama and a pinch of irony, she answered without hesitation. Sounds fair. And you? A complex instruction manual that no one reads until something goes wrong. She laughed out loud. And at that moment, Ethan knew this was it, right here, right now. Sophie, can I ask you a more serious question? You're not going to propose to me, are you? Not yet. She fell silent, half joking, half suspicious, then asked, would you give me a real chance? Sophie looked at him. For a few seconds, she seemed to search for an answer inside herself, like someone sifting through a messy drawer looking for something important. But before she could respond, the ground seemed to move literally. A loud crash echoed. A delivery truck parked wrong on the corner, jerked as it tried to pull away, and when it hit the curb, it startled a group of cyclists. One of them lost control, and as if scripted by a sarcastic universe, flew straight into the bookstore window. Glass shattered. People screamed. The cyclist fell on a pile of decorative cushions and walked away unscathed. But Sophie, surprised, stumbling backward, landed, sitting tearing the hem of her new skirt on an exposed screw from a shelf. Ethan rushed to her. Are you okay? She looked at her skirt. Are you kidding me? You didn't get hurt? Just my pride and my skirt again. Ethan tried not to laugh really hard. If you laugh, I swear I won't, he said, trying to hold back a chuckle. I swear. But then Sophie started laughing too. It was that kind of desperate comic laughter, the kind that only comes when the universe insists too much on a repeated joke. I'm a joke, Ethan. A walking joke. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She stopped. The laughter faded slowly. You're saying that while I'm sitting on the floor with a torn skirt surrounded by cushions and broken glass, especially now, he reached out his hand to help her up. That wasn't the date I imagined, he said. It was chaotic like everything with us, but sincere. She nodded. Sincere. Back in the car with her skirt patched up with bookstore tape and a cushion as a bonus on her lap, Sophie looked at him. About your question, Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his heart raced. I don't have an answer yet, she continued, but I want to keep asking with you. Then there's no problem. We'll build the answer. She smiled a tired but genuine smile. Just no bikes. Promise. But deep down they both knew it wasn't the bikes that were the problem. It was the heart, and that definitely was on the move. Sophie didn't know exactly when doubt started to follow her more intensely than certainty. Maybe it had started in the bookstore among the cushions and broken glass, or the moment Ethan extended his hand with that look of someone who expected nothing anymore, but offered everything. The fact is, in the days that followed, she felt torn. It wasn't like before when anger and hurt dominated everything. Now it was worse because she wasn't angry. She wasn't disappointed. She was involved, scared, hopeful, all at once. The messages between them started again, but at their own pace, neither too intense nor cold conversations about trivial things inside. Jokes, random comments about coworkers, like they were trying to build new ground over the rubble of what had been. At work, they kept it discreet. No more obvious flirting, no loud teasing, but there were glances, small smiles. And at certain moments, a quiet proximity that spoke louder than any conversation. One gray afternoon, Mia showed up at Sophie's office with 2 coffees and a suspicious look. You're hiding, she said, handing her one of the cups. I'm working with an expression like you're about to run off to a deserted island. Sophie sicht. Mia, have you ever felt like you were about to make a decision that would change everything I have? Every time I click buy on an internet sale, I'm being serious. I am too. But yes, I've felt that when I decided to end a 3-year relationship, for example, or when I agreed to move to a new city alone. Big decisions are scary. And how do you know if you're making the right choice? You don't know, you feel it. And even then, sometimes it feels wrong. Life doesn't come with email confirmation. Sophie leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Ethan asked me without words if we still have a chance, and I answered also without words. Maybe yes. And now I need to decide if I want to keep trying, or if it's better to stop here. Mia drank her coffee. Want some advice? Always. If you're going to mess up, let it be because of courage, never because of fear. Sophie smiled. You read that in a fortune cookie. But didn't you know? It was on a motivational post with a cheesy sunset, but it worked. That night, Sophie opened her closet and stared at her clothes as if searching for a sign. There were too many dresses she hadn't worn in months. Blouses she bought on impulse, pants that no longer fit. And then there was that skirt, not the one torn on the bike, but an identical one bought weeks later. It was there hanging like a reminder of everything that started absurdly. She picked it up and folded it carefully. Then she sat on the bed and wrote a single message. Tomorrow after work, the park where you almost killed me. Just you and me. Ethan responded with a bicycle emoji and a heart. Sophie rolled her eyes and smiled. The next day, the workday felt longer than usual. The clock seemed to move slower, as if time itself was nervous. Sophie tried to distract herself with simple tasks, organizing documents, reviewing contracts, ignoring the tremble in her hands. At exactly 6:00 p.m., she walked down the stairs with firm steps, even though her heart was racing. Ethan was already there. This time no bike, no suit, just jeans, a gray t-shirt. And that same look he always had, calm on the outside, confused on the inside. On time, he said, hands in his pockets. I had an appointment with someone who changed my life. He sounds pretentious. He is, but maybe he deserves a chance. They started walking through the park in silence. The place was the same as before, but it felt different. Maybe because now they were two. I've thought a lot about us, Sophie said, stopping near the lake. So have I. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm scared of me, of everything, of jumping in and getting hurt, of creating expectations, of becoming just another unresolved story in your life. Sophie, let me finish. He nodded. But despite all that, despite all the chaos, the misunderstandings, the failures, I still feel something I can't explain, and I don't want to ignore it. Ethan took a step forward. So tell me what you want. She took a deep breath. I want to keep going, but on my terms, at my pace, no rush, no pressure. I want something real, not perfect. And you'll have it. You say that now. And I'll say it tomorrow too, and after that, and every day you let me be around. They looked at each other, and there was no more doubt. Sophie took his hand. But if you rip another one of my skirts, I'll report you to the UN. It's a deal. The relationship that started there wasn't a fairy tale. It was human, with mistakes, adjustments, inside jokes, and some slips back into old habits. Ethan learned to listen more, to control less, to be vulnerable. Sophie learned to trust, to forgive, to allow herself. They still had tough days, late emails, cold coffees, long nights, but they also had spontaneous laughs, long hugs, and that good feeling of knowing they were trying together. One day, weeks later, Sophie got a call from HR. A new position was opening up, internal communications coordinator. A step forward, a new phase, but it meant no longer being Ethan's personal assistant. She thought, weighed the options, questioned herself. That night she told him, "You have to accept," he said without hesitation. "Even if we see each other less, I'd rather see you less and see you happy than see you every day knowing you're stuck because of me." She kissed him slowly, as if thanking him. "You're doing great as a boyfriend. I'm trying a lot, but I'm still scared of messing up, and I'm scared of getting hurt. So we keep messing up and healing together." On her last day as assistant, Sophie walked into Ethan's office with an envelope in her hand. "Is this a goodbye note?" he asked. "Something like that." He opened it. Inside was a tiny bicycle with a paper skirt stuck on the wheel. A gift, a reminder of what? That sometimes the silliest stumbles lead to unexpected places. He looked at her. "I wouldn't change a thing. Neither would I." They hugged. And right there in that moment, everything felt in the right place. The promotion wasn't just a career leap for Sophie. It was a dive into new territory. Now, as internal communications coordinator, she was dealing directly with departments. She barely knew, managing tight deadlines, leading small teams, and making decisions she had once only observed from afar. And with that came distance, not just physical, now on another floor in a different wing of the company, but also an invisible distance that had crept in between her and Ethan. Before she knew every detail of his routine, now she only heard about it. Mr. Hayes requested a change in the board meeting agenda. The CEO is out today visiting a key client. Ethan asked for new materials for the investor presentation. Everything came through others. Nothing was said directly anymore. In the early days, Sophie tried to ignore it. After all, it wasn't her job anymore to keep that constant contact, and they still saw each other outside of work. Quick dinners, end-of-day texts, some coffees during the week. But everything was changing quietly, as if an invisible veil was slowly being pulled between them. Even the conversations had changed. "How was your day?" Ethan would ask. "Busy. Had to review a report with mistakes, deal with 2 nervous interns, and still manage the internal engagement campaign. How about you?" Meetings, and more meetings. Yep. Long pauses, short answers. Conversations that used to flow for hours now seemed to stumble after a few sentences. On a Tuesday night, Sophie was leaving work when she ran into Ethan in the underground parking lot. It was the first time they'd seen each other by chance in weeks. "You're here this late," he said, surprised. "Presentation ran late. Just got out. And your dinner with Mia I canceled. Wasn't in the mood." They stood there for a second looking at each other. Both seemed more tired than they remembered. "Is something wrong with us?" she asked suddenly. Ethan took a deep breath. "I was going to ask you the same thing. Everything feels distant, forced, like we're trying to keep a conversation going that's already over." "Do you think it's over?" "I don't know." She looked away. "I think what scares me the most isn't the end. It's the doubt, the feeling that we're losing each other without even realizing it." Ethan stepped closer. "I'm still here, Sophie. But are we still here? Silence? Maybe we need some space," she said, struggling. "Space, not to end it, just to breathe." Ethan nodded, but his eyes said something else. "All right. Do you understand?" "No, but I respect it." In the days that followed, Sophie threw herself into work projects, deadlines, meetings. She tried to fill the emotional gaps with tasks like organizing a shelf to forget that the house was empty. Mia noticed right away. "You're in survival mode," she said, sitting down at Sophie's desk with a cup of tea. "I'm busy." "You're trying to distract yourself. It works temporarily then. It turns into silence. Sometimes silence is necessary, but not when it comes from a place that used to be full." Sophie stayed silent. Mia grabbed a piece of candy from the desk. "When are you going to talk to him?" "When I know what to say. What if it's too late?" Then it was meant to be. Meanwhile, Ethan buried himself in work more than ever. His employees noticed colder, more direct, less involved. Then, during a board meeting, someone mentioned Sophie's new internal campaign. Her team did a great job. Engagement levels went up 27% in 2 months. Ethan just nodded, but inside something tightened pride and sadness. He wasn't there to see it happen. He hadn't been part of the process. He had no idea what she went through to achieve that result. That's when he realized he was letting Sophie slip through his fingers once again. And this time, without even fighting for it, 2 days later, Sophie arrived at the office and found an envelope on her desk, as the same kind of envelope as before, the same handwriting. She hesitated before opening it, but she opened it. "Sophie, when you asked me for space, I thought it was just room to breathe. But time passed, and I realized it was also silence. And that silence forced me to listen. I realized I've been trying to keep you close without truly being with you. I was your chaos and your calm, but maybe I've also been your burden. I don't want to be a hard memory anymore. If there's still room for me on your path, I'm ready. But if there isn't, I'll understand. Just promise me one thing, be happy with me or without me. Always yours, Ethan." Sophie slowly folded the letter. She stared at the envelope for several minutes, as if it were possible to reverse time with nothing but willpower. Then she grabbed her phone but didn't call, didn't write. Not yet. That night, Mia showed up with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. "Tonight we're going to do what best friends do when love life goes into waiting mode, talk nonsense, and laugh at old memes. Is that therapy? It's what we've got, and it's cheaper." Sophie laughed. "Thanks for being here. I'll always be here, but you need to decide if you want him here too." "I do." "Then hurry before silence turns into a period." The next day, Ethan didn't show up to work. Sophie was surprised. No one knew exactly why. The secretary just said he'd taken the day off for personal reasons. At lunchtime, she picked up her phone, called, rang. Rang went to voicemail. She hesitated, then typed a message. "Read your letter. We need to talk today. Is that okay? Nothing?" 2 hours later, still no response. Mia came into the room with the newspaper. "Did you see this?" What? Mia turned the newspaper. A business column highlighted Ethan's possible transfer to an international branch. A new project, a bigger role, a new city. Sophie froze. He didn't say anything. Maybe he's still deciding, or maybe he's already decided. She grabbed her phone and tried calling again. Voicemail. Her heart raced. She left the room, went down the stairs, ran to the parking lot. Nothing. His car wasn't there. The weather changed that afternoon. A light rain started falling, as if the sky itself felt the weight of the moment. Standing in the company's lobby, Sophie finally wrote, "If you're still in town, meet me at our spot, please." And she sent it, then she grabbed her umbrella and left. She arrived at the park, wet, empty, quiet. She sat on the bench by the lake waiting. Minutes passed, then a few more. The rain picked up and so did the fear. Fear that she was too late, that she had waited so long for an answer, and when she finally wanted to give one, there was no one left to listen. But then, through the misty fog, a figure approached. Hands in pockets, slow steps, hair messy from the rain. "You came," she said, standing up. "Of course I did," he replied out of breath. "I thought I almost left, but something told me there was one last conversation left." Sophie moved closer. "The letter, it was all I could say clearly. And now I need to hear from you." She took a deep breath. "I choose to keep going even with the fear, even without certainty, because what we have isn't common, and I don't want to spend my life asking, what if?" Ethan took a step then. "Another. I'm willing to start everything over however is best for you. No rush, no pressure, just truth." They stood in silence for a moment, the rain falling around them like a soft soundtrack to their reunion. Then Sophie extended her hand. "Start over with me." Ethan took it. "Always." And there, in the same place where everything had gone wrong, they decided to begin again. This time the right way. Saying that starting over was easy would be a comfortable lie. Sophie and Ethan both knew that, but surprisingly they found that starting over with lightness could be better than trying to pick up where they left off. Now everything was different. No more tense glances in the office or sharp jokes to hide their feelings. What they had was something more mature, still imperfect, because that was part of them, but honest, natural. She still rolled her eyes at his jokes, and he still forgot his phone charger at important meetings. But they were together for real for the first time without any reservations. One Saturday, Sophie woke up to the smell of pancakes coming from the kitchen. "Are you trying to win me over with food?" she asked, appearing in the doorway with her hair tied up in a messy bun. "Win you over, I already won. Now I'm just maintaining the investment," Ethan replied, holding a spatula and wearing an apron that said Chef of Love. She looked at the apron. "Does that have glitter on it, culinary glitter?" "Very sophisticated." They sat down to eat. The conversation flowed easily, just like it always did during the good times. "You know what I was thinking," Ethan said. "Stacking pancakes, that's always a risk. We've been through it all. Torn skirts, nosy ex-girlfriends, painful silences, almost breaking up, and an almost tragedy involving pillows, and a reckless cyclist. Exactly. And still, we survived. We survived and got better." He looked at her, a different sparkle in his eyes. "So maybe it's time to do this right." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Do what life with you, all in, with a contract, witnesses, cake, and dramatic vows." "Ethan Hayes, are you asking me to marry you?" He got up, went to the living room, came back pushing a pink kid's bike with training wheels and a basket. "I was going to do this in style with a fancy dinner and violin, but I thought this would be more us. This is..." She started laughing. "A bicycle. Not just any bicycle, the bicycle of a new beginning." He opened the basket. Inside was a velvet box. Sophie put her hand over her mouth, already laughing with tears in her eyes. Ethan knelt down, still wearing the glitter apron. "Sophie Bennett, since the day you lost your skirt because of me, my life's been off balance, and I realized I didn't want any routine where you weren't there. Will you marry me and keep laughing at my bad ideas for the rest of our lives?" She didn't answer immediately. She just stood there trying to hold back both the tears and the laughter at the same time. "I accept. Of course I accept, you crazy guy." Ethan slid the ring on her finger, and they both fell into an embrace, straight into the pancakes. The wedding was set for 6 months later. Mia took on the role of headmaid of the chaotic and joyful planning. "I demand 3 things," she declared at the first planning meeting. "A fabulous dress, a dramatic bouquet, and no chance of boredom." "Can we get married on a spinning stage?" Ethan suggested. "Only if you're dressed as a chef with glitter," Sophie replied. The big day arrived with sunshine, a clear sky, and more chaos than any normal ceremony could handle. To start, the decorator mixed up the instructions and decorated the hall with bicycles hanging from the ceiling. "Is this artistic?" Sophie's mom asked, her eyes wide. "It's symbolic," Mia answered before texting the group Plan B. "The bicycles are now part of the theme. Pretend it was intentional." Sophie got stuck in the zipper of her dress 10 minutes before walking in. Mia had to use pliers to get it undone. "It's all good," she said, sweating. "This is normal. Every bride almost rips her dress from nerves." "I'm not nervous," Sophie lied, shaking all the way down to her lashes. Outside, Ethan waited at the altar with the wrong left shoe. They swapped shoes in the dressing room. He only noticed when he tried to walk straight and waddled like a penguin. But none of that mattered when the music started, and Sophie appeared. No tripping, no torn skirt, no hesitation. Ethan looked at her like time had stopped. Mia, standing nearby, whispered, "He looks like a CEO seeing the emotional profit of his life double." The ceremony was led by a friend of the couple who wasn't a priest or a judge, but gave such an awkward and charismatic speech that half the guests were crying from laughter. "We're here to unite two people who have gone through more accidents, stumbles, and emotional GPS errors than any couple I know, but who decided still to stick together. This, my friends, is what I call success." When it was time for the vows, Sophie took the microphone. "Ethan Hayes, I promise not to yank your tie during meetings anymore, unless you deserve it. I promise to patiently listen to your ridiculous ideas and laugh, even when they're only half funny. I promise to be your partner on the good days, your rock on the bad days, and your fan on every other day. And most of all, I promise to never forget the day everything started, with a skirt flying in the middle of the street." Ethan wiped a tear away and took the microphone. "Sophie Bennett, I promise to never ride a bike toward you again unless it's to run away together from a boring corporate event. I promise to take care of you on your chaotic days, respect you on your tough days, and admire you every other day. And I promise, even after 50 years, to still laugh with you about our first mistakes and thank God every day that they happened." When the I-do's were said, the guests cheered through biodegradable confetti, and Mia almost passed out from emotion. At the party, the first dance wasn't a waltz. It was an impromptu choreography to a pop song from the 2000s, which ended with Ethan nearly falling and Sophie saving the moment with a laugh and a kiss. The pink bike from the proposal stayed at the entrance of the party, decorated with flowers and a sign hanging on it. Here started the most beautiful disaster of our lives. The guests took pictures, made jokes, and everyone left with party favors: mini bicycles with fabric skirts attached to the wheels. Mia, holding the microphone, made the final toast. "Today we celebrate not just love, but the improbable, the comic, the things that go wrong until they go right. And in the end, that's what makes everything so perfect." Later, in the hotel room where they spent their wedding night, Sophie lay beside Ethan, both still with glitter in their hair and goofy smiles on their faces. "Do you think we'll keep laughing like this forever?" she asked, staring at the ceiling. "As long as it's up to me, yes. But I'll probably keep tripping over furniture, forgetting birthdays, and making coffee too strong. And I'll probably keep complaining about all of it, dramatizing and threatening to hide your bike forever." "Perfect," he said. "Sounds like a good life plan." And then, before turning off the lights, Ethan pulled her closer and whispered, "You know, for everything that went wrong, I'm thankful. Why? Because everything that went wrong brought me here with you, and that is my happy ending." Sophie smiled, resting her head on his chest, then let the mess of life come together. Months after the wedding, life settled into a rhythm that was both new and familiar. Sophie thrived in her role as internal communications coordinator, leading projects that brought the company closer together. Her campaigns were bold, her ideas fresh, and her confidence grew with every success. Ethan, meanwhile, continued steering the company through its international expansion, navigating high-stakes deals with a calm that only came from knowing he had someone solid waiting for him at home. Their days were busy, often spilling into late nights, but they made time for each other, small moments like sharing takeout on the couch or arguing over who made better coffee. Mia remained Sophie's rock, always ready with a sarcastic quip or a bottle of wine when life got overwhelming. "You two are disgustingly happy," she teased one evening, sprawled across Sophie's living room with a pizza box between them. "It's not all perfect," Sophie admitted, picking at a slice. "We still fight. He leaves dishes in the sink, and I'm pretty sure I scare him when I get too intense about work. That's marriage," Mia said, shrugging. "It's not about being perfect. It's about not running away when it's messy." Sophie nodded, thinking of the torn skirts, the misunderstandings, the rain-soaked park bench. They hadn't run away. One quiet Sunday, Sophie and Ethan decided to revisit the park where it all began. They walked hand in hand, the lake sparkling under the afternoon sun. "This place feels different now," Sophie said, stopping at the bench where she'd once waited for him in the rain. "Less like a crime scene," Ethan teased. She elbowed him lightly. "Less like the universe was laughing at me." They sat down, watching joggers and families pass by. Ethan pulled a small paper from his pocket, a crumpled receipt from the bookstore where Sophie's skirt had met its second demise. "Kept this," he said, grinning. "A souvenir of our chaos." Sophie laughed, snatching it from him. "You're ridiculous. And you love it." "Maybe I do." As they sat there, a cyclist zoomed past, too close for comfort. Sophie instinctively grabbed Ethan's arm, then burst out laughing. "Some things never change," she said. Ethan wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "Good. I like our brand of chaos. They stayed there until the sun dipped below the horizon, talking about nothing and everything. Future plans, silly dreams, the possibility of a dog. Sophie was pro, Ethan was skeptical. It was ordinary, unremarkable, and yet it felt like the most important moment they'd shared in a while. Back at home, Sophie found the tiny bicycle from their wedding favors tucked in a drawer. She held it up, the paper skirt still stuck to the wheel. "We should frame this," she said, half joking. Ethan looked over from the kitchen where he was attempting to make dinner without burning the apartment down. "Frame it. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen." "It's art," Sophie countered, setting it on the counter. "It's us." He walked over, kissed her forehead, and said, "Then it's perfect." Life wasn't without its challenges. There were days when work pulled them in opposite directions, when miscommunications led to sharp words, when the weight of their past doubts crept back in. But they'd learned to face those moments together, to talk through the noise, to choose each other even when it wasn't easy. Sophie kept her promise to never forget the skirt incident, bringing it up whenever Ethan got too smug. Ethan kept his promise to admire her every day, even when she was in sweatpants yelling at a broken printer. One evening, as they sat on their balcony overlooking the city, Sophie turned to Ethan. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" she asked, sipping her wine. "Every day," he said, his eyes soft. "I think about the bike, the park, the letters, the way you looked at me when you said yes. I think about how I almost lost you, and how I'll never let that happen again." Sophie reached for his hand. "You won't. We're too stubborn for that." They laughed, and in that moment the world felt small, simple theirs. Years later, when they told their story to friends or curious coworkers, it always started with the skirt and the bike. "It was a disaster," Sophie would say, grinning. "But the best kind," Ethan would add, his arm around her. And they'd laugh because that was their truth. A love built on stumbles, patched together with courage, and held tight by the belief that even the messiest beginnings could lead to something beautiful.